the first word in TPS is temporary. It's always supposed to be temporary. And specifically in regards to the Haitians who have come here, the first batch came, I think, in 2010 after the earthquake in Haiti. It's been 16 years since the earthquake. So that's not temporary. And at what point, by American standards, are we going to decide that Haiti is livable again? When's that day coming? Is that coming in 6 months? Is that coming in a year? Probably not anytime soon. And one thing that doesn't get talked about is some of these TPS recipients, not all, but some, have been doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers who left Haiti. How is Haiti as a nation supposed to rebuild itself when we've brain drained a lot of their talent and planted them in Springfield, Ohio, where it's not fair to the residents of Springfield, Ohio either. And as a nation, we are legally obligated to our own citizens before we're obligated to anybody else. Africans are Africans. They are citizens of the nation of South Africa. They reside on the continent of Africa. For decades, this country, they are African. Whether they are white or black, they are African. And for decades, this country has taken in millions of refugees from several African nations that have been destabilized. Somalia, so much so that we've changed the entire demographic of a U.S. state. But Somalia, Eritrea, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of the Congo.
What do all those places have in common?
We've taken in millions.
What do all those places have in common,
So
Caroline?
now we're taking in, what they all have in common is every single one of those nations that I just listed, including South Africa, are African countries. And we've taken in millions from the others, but we're taking in 6,000 from South Africa. And everyone's up
is that all of those
Caroline,
countries
that's what's
have
suggested. It's actually
we're
racism
experiencing
the 6,000
war,
and it's
embarrassing.
white that we're taking in. When we
What's going on, everyone? It's also Ken here today. As you saw from the intro, we're going to talk about immigration real quick. As you saw from the intro, there was a panel discussion about, immigration, brain drain, how are we expecting these countries to rebuild itself if all their brightest and most successful people are leaving and staying here in the USA. And I kind of wanted to point this out because the inconvenient truth here is that asylum isn't a right. And you saw from the intro, these guys were complaining about the South Afrikaners, right? The white South Africans and how they're being immigrated here or how they're being prioritized by the Trump administration. And Caroline Sunshine, if I remember her name correctly, she brought up an interesting point about how, hey, we immigrated a bunch of people. Many people who immigrated to this country were non-white. But all of a sudden, the liberal media, liberals, Democrats, they're getting mad over 6,000 white South Africans being provided like asylum here, right? And then they try to disparage them, saying that there's no prosecution. There's no evidence of prosecution in South Africa of white people being attacked or assassinated or killed, when the South African government complains about the fact that majority of the farmland is owned by white South Africans, right? I don't understand this obsession with liberals to try to discount the threats of these people running away from perceived attacks, but they don't give the same level of scrutiny with other races of migrants, right? And that's one thing I can't stand, right? We don't go, because majority of asylum claims, right, are not like true. This is the facts. Like, if you look into the people who are seeking asylum, 99% of them, or sorry, that's too much. 90% of them don't have a case. But no scrutiny over them. Oh, I'm running from Venezuela because I don't feel safe there. When a lot of the migration that we get here from majority of the immigration we get here is due to economics. The data confirms that more than 3 out of 4 immigrants, 75% coming to the United States, originate from origins in Latin America, Asia, and other non-white majority countries. Liberal media has no problem with this, right? But all of a sudden you're getting mad over 6. Make it make sense. I'll agree with the racism angle if we had like 75% of immigrants came from Europe or something, like white majority countries, and they're majority white, and then Trump everyone gets mad over 6,000 black South Africans being migrated over here. I'll have a problem. But when the opposite is going, oh no, we know what this is. This is about race. Why are you guys trying to drag race into everything? It's starting to get tiring. People are getting tired of the race conversation. And one of the things I wanted to point out here is that there's a lot of conflicting narratives about immigration, right? There's a poll that came out recently that it seems like almost half of the United States want ICE abolished. But without further ado, I want to kind of bring up this clip of JD Vance kind of bringing up immigration with Bill Maher. And I think this is the central point about immigration. And my main point here is asylum isn't a right, asylum is a privilege.
When I say you, here's what sticks in their craw.
Okay.
The number one issue, immigration. Not immigration. We like it that you closed the border. That needed to be done. The people who were here, the way you treated, I'm talking about your administration.
Okay.
You weren't out there yourself. But ICE, all that shit, too rough, too mean, too unnecessary. I think you've got, I'm not telling you what to do, okay? I'm just giving you some advice as a friend.
Okay.
And I am. And I'm not saying, I'm not asking you to apologize if I don't like when people do that. I'm just saying you go a long way toward getting people who are just completely shut the door to you and your administration if you would just own that you guys went too far. You went too far, and you should own it like you did childless cat ladies.
Well, okay. So here's the basic problem with that bill is you cannot do any deportations without law enforcement, and you can't do a law enforcement operation like that without having some situations that don't look good when they're recorded like that. I mean, let me give you like just one obvious example. Let's just set aside the immigration element of this, okay? If you take a guy who's committed murder and you go in and arrest that guy, sometimes that person's going to resist arrest. Sometimes if you take a video of it and it's out of context and you don't appreciate why that person is being arrested in the first place, it looks pretty icky if you take that out of context video clip. And what I worry about is when people say you can't ever do immigration enforcement if it produces a bad video clip, what they're really saying is you can't ever actually do immigration enforcement. We had 12 million people come into the country, into the interior over the last 4 years, or I should say from 2021 to 2025. And we were elected with a mandate to get some of those people out of the United States of America. You can't do that easily. Law enforcement deporting people is never an easy process. So I appreciate your argument that we've gone too far, but we couldn't do nothing. And I don't think there was an easy way to do this.
And I totally agree with the framing that JD Vance has put on because that's common sense, right? And this is the same thing. The abolish ICE is going to be the defund the police from 2020. Because right now Democrats think they have the momentum here, right? Oh, supposedly the support for abolishing immigration and customs enforcement reached a record high 50% amongst Americans, with 39% opposed. And according to the national, this is the poll they got it from the YouGov and Economist, and the rest of the proportionment are undecided. So as you break down party affiliation, of course, majority of it is in Democrats. Here's where this is why I'm making the video here for my fellow independents here, because I am a registered independent. I'm non-party affiliated. 52% support for abolishing ICE, the first time this demographic has crossed the 50% threshold. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is the fact of how some of the disapproval of the ICE tactics, I think JD Vance articulated some of those concerns there. And I also brought out some data points about how a lot of the excessive force and violent interactions, it happens in sanctuary cities. If you look at the data, 60% this violent excessive force in the 65%. 65% of Americans, including 54% of independents and 19% of Republicans, stated that the ICE agents have gone too far in their enforcement of immigration policies. I wish they defined this a little bit more. What do you mean that they've gone too far? Because in the end of the day, if someone resists arrest, like with the police, you expect some use of force to force compliance. So this is where I don't get, like, why are all of a sudden we're treating non-foreigners better than we're treating American criminals, like criminals that are American citizens that are committing crime. Like, make it make sense. I don't understand this. And I think this has a lot to do with the negative coverage from the mainstream media. CNN and all these liberal media, when Obama was doing this, because nothing changed. Nothing changed with immigration enforcement. It's just we became more active with it. Lack of confidence. 55% of Americans reported having very little confidence in the agency because of what? The media, right? 75% of voters want ICE officers to wear clearly identifiable uniform, and 59% oppose policies that allow agents to wear masks while on duty. Now, there's some context there. A lot of these agents, they're doing things that, like, this is where I'm saying that it's so one-sided with the criticism with ICE. They don't want to talk about the protesters, how violent the protesters has been. attacking ICE, stalking ICE officers, actively disrupting them, right? To the point where they had to do covert operations because people are obstructing them. This is why ICE don't wear identifiable uniform, at least not most cases. Come on, how many videos, how many clips, how much evidence do we have to show what happened in Minneapolis to expose some of those concerns? End of the day, majority of Americans want deportation to happen, and there's a group, the left, right? Leftist protesters, anti-ICE protesters, they're actively going out of their way, creating apps, creating notification systems to alert illegal immigrants. Imagine all this. If we take illegals and we put criminals, imagine someone was doing this for criminals. Would you accept that? No, you wouldn't. These are just tactics of responding to what the left is doing, to what these protesters are doing. But that context is not added because the mainstream media wants you to come away with a narrative where now almost half of America wants ICE abolished. This is what they want. This is why I said that the media is not about informing people. It's about creating a consensus to push the people towards. And this is the conclusion that the liberal media want. They want us to have a negative interpretation of ICE because in my estimation, I already talked about this, immigrants are a political asset for the Democratic Party. Demographic change, right? Changing demographics, right? Demographics equals destiny. This is the plan of the Democratic Party. And this is why they'll get mad when Trump wants 7,000 white South Africans, because they see that as the same playbook that they were playing for past a decade, bringing Latin American people here, Asian people here, because they see these as demographics that overwhelmingly, based on the odds, vote for their party. And when they see Trump do it, they take the same prism. They're saying, oh, this is racist. How is it racist? Oh, you say you close the border, but you're letting these people in. More people have left the United States than came into the United States. Trump still kept his promise. What are you making a big deal out of this? And this is the hypocrisy of the left, right? You're getting mad over 6,000 South Africans that happen to be white. And you see that as a demographic that won't vote for you. And now you're claiming racial discrimination? Make it make sense. When 75% of the immigrants that came into this country are from non-white countries? Like, it makes you think. But they want to blow it up and say, oh my God, this is racism. He closed down the border, but he's letting white Africans in, only like 6,000. When Joe Biden opened the border, he let 12 million people in, where 75% of them weren't white. So what's your point? What you crying about? And this is kind of the hypocrisy I can't stand with the Democrats and the left, is that they don't sit here and pretend that, oh, we're trying to hold Trump to account. But how are you holding Trump to account when there's more people that left this country than are actually immigrating into this country, even with these 6,000 South Africans? Make it make sense. You're just mad about how this will affect you politically. And that is the real crux of all this. But, without further ado, I want to go into more discussing, the removal of the temporary worker status from the Haitian migrants. So let's get into it.
When we've brain drained a lot of their talent and planted them in Springfield, Ohio, where that's not fair to the residents of Springfield, Ohio either. And as a nation, we are legally obligated to our own citizens before we're obligated to anybody else. Springfield, Ohio, notice how the migrants they're never brought to Nantucket. They're never brought to Beverly Hills. They're never brought to Martha's Vineyard. They're never going to go compete with hedge fund bros who inherited the job from their dad. They're always going to be brought to middle America, places like Springfield, Ohio, where they're going to have to compete with Americans for wage.
And this is another thing that, with the socialists kind of slowly trying to take over the Democratic Party, they always talk about how they're trying to protect the working class, but you can't protect the working class by allowing mass immigration like this, right? I talked about the Ohio story too, when they bring all these Haitians to Springfield, Ohio, and how these corporations or the employers in that town were actively going after these Haitian immigrants to work for them because they're a lot cheaper than hiring American workers, right? And then the left will say, oh, no Americans wanted to work these jobs. These these immigrants are actually helping us with something that we found. We found a job shortage out there. And then the argument's always been, everyone's complaining about, oh, minimum wage, low wages, all this stuff. And Americans are not willing to do those jobs for those wages, right? These are the contexts or the nuances that I think a lot of Democrats leave out when they're trying to make these arguments about, oh, we shouldn't deport illegal immigrants. So you let people break the law because you need them. That doesn't set a good precedent, right? That doesn't. Like, in the end of the day, we always talk about housing prices, there's not enough resources to go around with social government programs, but they don't want to have address the elephant in the room that a majority of immigrants are on government services, on government systems, and that is going to displace an American that need these things. And then the Democrats who allow these people to stay in here, who don't want to deport people who came into this country illegally, will then demand more tax money, will then demand a billionaire's tax just to go squander it all over again. And the human desire may be infinite, but your resources are finite, and eventually you're going to run out of resources. And to stop it before it gets to that point, you have to be more efficient about how you carry out immigration and who we allow on our government systems. And it needs to be a higher standard and a higher bar to be met before we allow people to be on our government systems. And that's the reality I think a lot of Democrats and socialists don't want to accept or admit. But, that's just my thoughts. I'd like to hear yours in the comment section below.
Just depreciate those wages. I'm sure, does anybody at this table, have you heard the name Aiden Clark, an 11-year-old boy? No, you guys don't know his name?
Here we go.
11-year-old boy killed by a Haitian immigrant under TPS with no American driver's license, who rammed his car into a bus, killed 11-year-old Aiden, and injured 20 school children.
That's the consequences of some of these policies. And instead of confronting those policies, like this is my thing with Democrats. When they bring up like the excessive ICE force, right? And then this is the results of Trump's immigration policy, right? They don't want to take accountability for their open border stuff. They downplay it, they dismiss it, they say it's not happening, right? They want to get mad at Trump getting 6,000 white immigrants into the country, right? But Joe Biden gave millions a temporary legal status for coming into this country illegally. Oh, Trump gave these 6,000 white Afrikaners goodie bags. You gave millions of immigrants who are non-white legal status to stay in this country. And not only that, in some contexts, depending on where they were immigrated to, you were giving them business loans so they can go out and buy businesses. I remember vividly a video of a black lady crying. She's like, oh my God, I can't make ends meet. I can't live. It's hard to make day-to-day living expenses. And this illegal who barely speak a lick of English, the government is giving him a loan to buy my business so he can start working. There's instances like that going around. In New York, these immigrants, some of these illegals, were holed up in fancy hotels, living, getting food, free food, right? $10,000 on the SNAP. Remember the SNAP card with $10,000 in it? These were the Democrats' goodie bag. But you crying about Trump giving 6,000 Afrikaners asylum into the country. The hypocrisy of the left. And this is what I'm talking about. But the media don't cover on that angle. They want to cover the angle, oh my God, Trump is somehow racist because he let 6,000 Afrikaners, even though we let millions of non-white immigrants come into this country, and give them goodie bags and give them stuff that is more substantial than some goodie bag of whatever was in there. No. Let's not get mad about that. Let's not get mad about the fact that we gave illegals $10,000 in SNAP benefits in New York and holed up in fancy hotels, and we were pushing people away who was trying to record these hotels. Not illegal immigrants who are non-white, they were from Latin America, bragging about how, oh yeah, I just had my baby and they covered everything. Oh, what? You got free healthcare here? Yeah, we got free healthcare. They just paid everything for us on our expense. Oh, no. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about how Trump's a racist because he let 6,000 immigrants in that happen to be white. That's what CNN wants to focus on. That's what the liberals on the panel want to cry about. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
Who is this good for? Okay. Not the Haitians, not the American people. I understand some of the president's frustration on Capitol Hill because it's like, we never have the votes for the SAVE Act. We never have the votes to confirm Bill Pulte, but we always have the votes for $9 billion more for Ukraine or $300 billion more for the war. And it's like, come on, get real.
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Republicans want to win elections. That's how government. And they want to win elections. And if you happy country does not elect Donald Trump. An angry country elects Donald Trump. And Aristotle said that you have to have a thriving middle class in a democracy because it moderates the politics. And when that middle class shrinks and when it disappears, you're going to get political extremes. And this country has produced Donald Trump to the presidency, and now it's produced Mamdani in New York City and AOC.
We have a country where 1 in 3 Americans under 35 live with their parents. The average age of the first-time homebuyer is 40 years old. The main
And you can't tell me, right? Even Canada will admit to you. There's a reason why Canada restrict their immigration, why they restrict visas, why they restricting H-1B visas. Is because they saw a correlation with higher migration, with higher home costs, housing costs, right? Lower wages, more job competition in whatever area they happen to migrate these immigrants in. And this is why I laugh when these socialists come in here saying we're gonna fix affordability. We're gonna help Americans. We're gonna help the working class. When the biggest impediment to the working class is mass immigration. This is the conundrum that I think Democrats find themselves in. And this is why I say, from an American standpoint, right, from a nationalist standpoint, Democratic Party does not solve any of the problems that we're dealing with right now.
middle class pathway to upward mobility and a better life, college, has all but collapsed. Most people do not believe that going to college is the way to have a better life anymore. That has been our main economic highway for decades. All of that has collapsed. A civilized global superpower would look at all of those statistics and treat it like the national emergency that it is. Because what's going to happen is the United States is going to get revolution one way or another. We don't want to see it go down the path that Russia, France, Iran went down, where the young disenfranchised just revolted. You're not going to beat left-wing populism with anything other than right-wing populism. America already said that that's what they want. But the Trump administration has to double and triple down on its right-wing populist policies to block.
And I'll end it there, because this is something that I've been pointing out, is that Trump needs to focus more on the domestic policy, right? I've been covering a lot of stuff alluding to that, like America's money problems, the economy. And I just think one of the reasons why I'm in favor of, or I'm hoping that the Iran peace deal work out, even though they're hitting a snag right now, is that I want the focus to be back to domestic policy, and domestic policy has to be priority number one. It can't be playing second fiddle to the Middle East and all this stuff. And I think a lot of Americans, especially young Americans, such as in my age range, from the 18 to 49s, we're noticing that our political class is focusing too much on things that don't matter. The Republicans are this, Democrats are socialists. The reason why I'm just getting on Democrats for letting their socialist party kind of take over and trying to be the face of the party is because I don't believe that they have the solution whatsoever. Democratic socialists don't have the solutions. In fact, from a long-term perspective, they'll make everything worse. They'll accelerate this revolution that we're seeing right now. And one of the main things that I use as an example is immigration. Look at all the negative outcomes that immigration have on native workers of a country, yet you still want to push for open borders? And you think just giving more money to the government is going to solve that? No, it's going to create a bad incentive where the government is going to be like, you see what's going on in the UK. Oh, we're going to let these immigrants get away with damn near murder because we want to keep them there, because keeping them there solidifies my political power. Everyone wants to talk about money and politics, right? How money corrupts politicians and all this stuff, but no one wants to talk about how politicians and how corrupting immigration is. That, hey, these politicians will make it easier for a certain a group of people, aka illegals, to try to vote in their local elections, vote in their country, give them a pathway to citizenship. That's not corrupting. That's not trying to stack the deck in your favor so that way you stay in power. But you want to focus on billionaires and millionaires influencing politics. But you don't want to look at how illegals corrupt and influence politics. And this is the name of the game. Because as an American, that's how I see it. I don't look at it just based on my political affiliation. I have none. I have no motive to look at it from a Republican standpoint or a Democrat standpoint. I'm looking at it from an American standpoint. And from an American standpoint, illegals coming to this country and giving a pathway to citizenship, giving bribes and incentive to vote for a particular party is just as bad as billionaires influencing our politicians. Because then you get a situation of what's going on in UK, where they're giving slap on the wrist to these migrants because these migrants are a pathway for the politicians in the current jurisdiction to stay in power. I don't understand why no one wants to talk about it. I understand why liberals don't want to talk about it. But I don't understand why the mainstream media, who's supposed to be this distributor of knowledge, supposed to inform the American populace, is not informing the American populace about this conflict of interest that many Democratic politicians have to keep illegals in this country, to give them handouts, to give them special treatment. and then want to cry foul about Trump giving 6,000 Africans asylum here when we've been doing it for decades for non-whites, but all of a sudden these people happen to be the wrong skin color, and all of a sudden you want to make it a race issue. This is clearly a deflection to make the immigration thing about something else. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts and perspective in the comments below. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you feel so inclined.